Welcome to everyone, just hitting the top of the hour, and delighted to welcome to you I think it's going to be a fascinating topic, one that's very dear to yourselves and to your audiences, which is 5 steps to streamlining your IVR system. And absolutely delighted to be joined by two very distinguished panelists, Lode van der Sande. Lode, welcome to you.
Hello.
Hi.
Hello, everybody.
And Lode and I used to work together about, must be about 15 years ago, when we were both working as call center consultants. And Lode, I think, is going to bring some fascinating insights into the way that the inner workings of an IVR work, with a lot of quite detailed analysis, which I think is great. And Lode, you're now working with a company called Care4CC, which is a pan-European support service for call center technology. Is that correct?
Yeah, as you are delivering webinars, I mean, we are doing the jobs, let's say, of effectively helping contact centers improve their quality, identifying problems, etc. So that's our main job. And we do that, let's say, globally, obviously mainly Europe, as we live here.
So Lode is normally based in Belgium and is dialing in today from Monza in Italy. We'll then be going across to Devon on the news desk, who'll be putting up your top tips and questions from the audience. And then also delighted to be joined back on another webinar with us, Frank Sherlock from Genesis. And Frank, you're going to be talking about the customer experience part of IVR.
I am indeed, yes. I think Lode will be talking about the inner workings and the analytics and investment. I'll be talking more about some of the sort of practical business hints and tips, but generally centered around the area of customer experience with the IVR.
And I think IVR is a topic that's quite dear to your heart. I think you've worked for quite a number of years in the IVR space.
I have, yeah. I mean, currently I'm working in the cloud side of Genesis. I have worked for a number of IVR companies as well, and within the Genesis portfolio we have things like cloud IVR. So yes, I've directly or indirectly, Jonty, I think I've had 20 years experience of IVR.
Wonderful. So a lot of wealth and experience we're going to be taking from that. So just a little bit of housekeeping. The slides are available from the chat room, callcenterhelper.com/chat. You can leave your tips and questions there, and I'll be asking Lode at the end of the webinar to pick out the best tip, who will win a bottle of champagne or a box of chocolates. And there's a replay available later on today, callcenterhelper.com/recorded webinars. We will be going through a lot of details. So if you're logged into the chat room, callcenterhelper.com/chat, and then this little link on the right-hand side, you can download all of the webinar slides from there, which I think we're going to be going through quite a lot of detail. Well, I'm going to start off with a poll. We're going to be looking at streamlining your IVR system. So a good poll would be, how do you rate your IVR system? So do you believe that it provides a first-class service that you can measure and are proud of? Do you believe it provides a good service, but you don't particularly measure it? Do you think it provides a reasonable service, or do you think it's sort of rather old, static, and needs updating, or are you not using an IVR at all? So, Lode, from your experience, what would you guess would be a likely outcome of the poll?
I think it would be probably a reasonable service, somewhere in the middle.
Okay. Well, let's have a look and see if that fits together. And we have, yes, that's the most common one. 48% think it provides a reasonable service. We have only 3% of the audience who think they're doing a first-class service, so hopefully there'll be a few more of those after we've given all our recommendations. You've deployed those. 17% provide a good service, rather worryingly, Frank, we've got 21% believe it's static and needs updating.
It's a very honest audience. I would have said that, you know, of the IVRs, you know, that I come across, that a 20% number that are just simply not fit for purpose and need updating would be about right. So yeah, it's there's lots of opportunity for improvement, and hopefully the audience will gain some ideas about how to do that today.
And it would be quite interesting to understand what your customers would say of that. Would they agree with that or not? Okay, what I'd like to do is just have a little drill down on the topic of IVR, and I'd like to ask the audience if you could put into your chat room, what voice do you use for your IVR messages? Do you have a professional recording? Do you use one of your own members of staff? Do you have a regional accent? Do you go for a neutral accent? Is it male or is it female? If you'd like to put the details in the chat room. Neil says we use professionally recorded messages, as does Graham and Nadine. She says we only use female in it. Adam says professional recording and ad hoc messages by staff members when needed. All the voices are female. We've got quite a number of people with professional recordings. Euro says a female regional accent. D says in-house recording, 2 members of staff, both female and have a local accent. Fiona says a female internal voice. John, we've got a professional recorded by a male actor. Susanna says we use one of our female agents. In fact, looking through, Yolandi says professional female regional. So it looks like, Frank, the female voice seems to our audience to be the most popular of all the ones we've got coming back. Are you surprised by that? I certainly am.
Not really. I mean, I'm encouraged by. I mean, I would say that when it comes to voice talent, you've got to be using professional talent, and you've got to create a persona. And to create a persona, you need to be using professional, if you like, acting talent to do the voice. I would discourage using internal resources. I think it creates, you know, an inconsistency perhaps, and people. You must remember, with IVR, the only thing that people actually interact with are the prompts. So it's really, really important that you get that right. There is a lot of science, Jonty, behind, you know, do males respond better to female gender? Do females respond better to male gender IVRs? And you know, I think ultimately that it doesn't make that much difference. I don't believe that that regional accents make that much difference either. I think what really matters is that you've created a persona and you professionally recorded the prompts using professional voice talent.
Yeah, interesting. So quite a range of different backgrounds there. So and I understand that even if you use professional, it is possible with some contracts to actually get a sort of a service. Even if that person leaves, they get another actor who can fit in with a similar recording. So we're now going to go across on the agenda now to Loda van der Sande, who has done a lot of work on IVR and is going to take us through some of his research that he's done in terms of you know, monitoring IVR and doing health checks on IVR systems. So Loda, do you want to take us through some of your findings?
Okay, so thank you, Jonty. So let's start the presentation. As we already said, our company is, let's say, mainly focused on the deep dive into what's happening inside the IVR platform. So let's start directly with the first slide. For another reason. Okay,
just that you need to do
another
click.
Okay, so let's say before we start into going deep diving, I would like to discuss a little bit a typical and a high quality process that's being used for, let's say, roughly 30 years now, since the early days of Motorola. So this approach is called Six Sigma, and what does that mean? Well, is that we follow a certain process of, let's say, defining, measuring, analyzing, improving, controlling what's happening, and that on a continuous basis. Yeah, and so following such a process, you obviously need the tools in order to do that. And so what we are going to look at over the next slides is different examples that we have captured from real life. So let's first look at some typical KPIs that are being defined in contact center world. And let's compare these to the Six Sigma standards. So we talk about average speed of answer, and we talk about, well, let's say in average our talk time is 5 minutes. We talk about SLA, 80% needs to be handled in 20 seconds. We talk in ICT environments that my ICT platform needs to be 99.999% available, so 5 nines. But then, if you look at the Six Sigma standards, the standard tells about 3.4, so roughly between 3 and 4 defects per million that you can get. Now, this is obviously a complete different approach than 80% within 20 seconds. Yeah, and if you would buy, let's say, a car, you would not expect that in 20% of the cases your car is defect. No, you don't want in 20% of the cases that your car is delivered 2-3 months late. Yeah, so let's say Six Sigma is a very, very strong standard that is being set. And let's have a look how this applies in the contact center world. So first, let's define a few KPIs, and we start with a few high-level ones, and with that already we can dig very deep. So one would be, for example, how many menus have we presented? How many options have we, let's say, asked in those menus? How many announcements have we actually used inside our IVR? Are customer barging into our communication? And how long is the overall call duration from start to end? So let's have a look at a few of these. So the first one, the first chart, and obviously people need to go back to school here a little bit, to go and read a little bit more complex charts. But what we are showing here is the call duration over the amount of calls that have a certain call duration. And what we see here, so vertically we show the amount of calls that we're facing, and horizontally we are showing the different call durations that one can have. So what we can clearly see here is on the left, most of the calls, they are, let's say, pretty short, less than a minute. Yeah? We see that there is an average of roughly 5 minutes. But what we see also is that there are a few calls that take 2 hours, and that's what you see here. And that's obviously somewhat alarming because, that's strange. And so in average, what you would say is that the average of 5 minutes all seems fine. But you see that actually the average is also not representative because there are a few outliers here that are, let's say, completely exceptional. So if we would translate this specific customer here and we would look at the amount of these outliers, we would say it's 30 times worse than a Six Sigma standard. Yeah, 1 in 10,000 calls takes you 2 hours. And actually, I have been listening into such a call with both an IVR where you can stay really an hour or 2 inside and in the call center. And one agent, that was a more contact center example, she was helping a person that wanted to do suicide. Yeah, and so obviously you see that calls are, let's say, can get very strange, very long for specific reasons. And then the question comes, how do you handle all these situations? And that's what we mean. We want to understand not just the average that you see in every tool, but we want to understand what are all the outliers and how do they, what's the volumes of these outliers.
And I think it's worth pointing out, Loda, the scale here, the vertical scale, is a logarithmic scale. So each one of the thicker lines is 10 times larger than the other. So effectively, it's sort of squashing down the left-hand side of the chart.
Yeah, in 2-3 charts we will see a linear chart, and I will explain a little bit why we use logarithmic here, because otherwise everything seems small, and actually it is not that small. You will see that later in the next slide. So let's look at the next one, and actually here we already have such a linear slide. Here we are going to look at the amount of menus that we are, questions, let's say, that we are presenting to our customers in the IVR. And what you clearly see here is a linear chart, so we're not logarithmic anymore. And so roughly 50,000 of the different menus. There were, 50,000 customers have faced 4 questions. Yeah? And then here what you see is around 30,000, 40,000 customers have faced 5 questions. But then again, we see these outliers happening here. And on the very right border here, we see that there have been customers which have been presented 63 questions. Now, this is, to my view, something which starts to become ridiculous. I mean, you can design an IVR to do a lot of self-service, yeah. But if you start to present 63 questions, I mean, the chance of having a satisfied customer at the end is, let's say, very limited. So typically, well, one would like to analyze what really happened in that specific call. Yeah? And as you see here, from a Six Sigma perspective, this is 60 times off. Yeah? 1 in 5,000 calls is facing 63 questions being presented. So what I don't want to say is that IVR is bad. Yeah, it's very important. IVR in average is very good and highly automated, so we can really get benefit of that. But what is important is if we don't manage it right and we don't design our call flows right, what happens is we get into ridiculous situations. And we've had a few more of those. So this chart here shows me a little bit how many announcements have been given to the customer. And it was a little bit amazed to see. Obviously, we saw again these 4 announcements here of that previous slide that were presented to customers. But we have also seen situations here where customers have been presented by 300 announcements. I mean, 300 announcements. You will fall from your chair when you try to listen to all of those. So clearly, not a good service. Yeah? And it's just being aware that this is happening.
And Loda, what do you think is causing these 200 or 300 announcements?
Many times it is just customers that are stuck, that get into a certain call flow that is not 100% designed right, and customers try to achieve something. They have to try all the different options, and step by step, let's say, this ever increases and increases. Yeah. Sometimes there is obviously voice quality problems. There is a different set of reasons why this can happen. And sometimes there are technical problems that actually let customers stay in the IVR. And then if you really want to speak something and you have perseverance, yeah, you have these outliers clearly happening.
Mm.
Yeah? So let's look at the next slide. Here we are going to look at the time when one is exiting, when one is actually pressing a DTMF tone in order to respond to the menu option that was being presented. So on the x-axis, you see that when you follow the mouse here, most customers, they directly press after 2 seconds. I'll say not most, many customers directly after 2 seconds, they press the option menu number 1 that is being spoken. But in the meantime, the other options are being presented to other customers, and you see that quite some customers are here. They are responding to the second menu option after 20 seconds here in the announcement. And then you see that many customers, most customers actually, have heard the first option, the second option, and then finally heard the third option, and then they select their option. So this means that actually in this specific question that is being presented to the customer, just about every customer is losing 30 seconds. Yeah? Now, a question is obviously, what is happening here wrong? Is this now a customer who is just trying to rationally follow all the options and select the best one? Or is it such that this is an inefficient call flow where the third option is the most valid one? So this is something that obviously always needs to be analyzed, and for this specific customer, it was the third option that was not being, let's say, that was the most valid. So why not put it then as the first option and actually rearrange my IVR tree? And then a surprising amount here, yeah, some customers, they didn't answer at all. Yeah, so they were not able to send the DTMF key or just were waiting and waiting. So just basically this is giving an overview of how customers behave inside the IVR. And then what you see underneath, a little bit in red, yeah, the small amounts, these are customers that are dropping out. And you can actually see exactly inside the announcements when are they dropping out. And that gives a very clear, let's say, overview. So, and
so Loda, as a percentage, what would that percentage be? That's about 3%, is it? 4%?
Yes, I had the chart open. I didn't show it, but I think for this specific one, it was just 3-4% was being dropped. I think the bulk was obviously in blue, and which was obviously let's say responded and matched. And then there are 129 from the few thousand calls. So let's say something in the direction of the 10% was just there was no response at all. Yeah. And in such situations, you don't want to reiterate the same question from the second time that you reiterate the question. You obviously start to pass the call to the agents if this is according to the strategy, obviously. Yeah. So let's look at the next chart. Here is actually a funny one. And what we are showing here is the amount of DTMF keys that customers are pressing within a single session that they have with the IVR. So obviously, fantastically, on the left side, what you see here, let's say 50,000 customers have pressed just one single DTMF key. That's this big chart here on the left, yeah, big bar. What you also see is that many customers have entered their PIN. That's what you see here. And what you clearly see is if you would make an average of this, you would say that in average every customer is typing in 4, 5, 6 DTMF keys, and there is absolutely no customer that is typing so many IVR keys. So what I want to make you aware is that the average is, let's say, it's just one parameter, and it sometimes has no meaning, and it's not even happening, the average. Yeah? So what's happening is, yeah, customers click to the agents, that's the first option, and otherwise they enter a PIN code, and then obviously there are some retries happening and further menu progressing. But the surprise is one customer here, he has pressed 128 times a DTMF key. So we started to look a little bit at what really happened in that situation. And we saw that he was pressing all the time 0000. So he probably wanted to speak to an agent and really got angry. He was typing in up to 7 or 8 times the 0 key per second. So he was actually load testing his phone. Yeah? And that was... Yeah, that was a...
I thought that he'd fallen asleep in queue and banged his head on the keypad.
Yeah, it could as well be. Yeah. But that example shows, let's say, that IVRs are not rightly sized, or not rightly designed to handle such situations.
Yeah.
And then this chart, so this shows a little bit a more technical perspective. I mean, we have seen menus, we have talked about call-on-call durations, etc. But one very important aspect is that your IVR is running on a platform, on an ICT system, and on a server in the end. And so I give an example here of a customer situation, a very big one, telecom operator, that was, let's say, in kind of a fight with his outsourcer. And his outsourcer, whenever the customer said, look, I have problems, the outsourcer said, look, we have 33% spare capacity, 66%, this is actually an error, I have to correct this, 66% spare capacity. And this means that actually the system is, let's say, more or less always sleeping. It has all the spare capacity. But the customer was experiencing problems. And that went on for 2 years. Ping pong, we have problems, no you don't have problems, we have problems, you don't, etc., etc. So then we got involved into the analysis. And we immediately saw that this average here was not representative. I mean, you see on one side, yeah, a system completely overloaded here. 100% of the time it's working and it's overloaded. And on the other hand, you have here a system that was, let's say, completely sleeping. Yeah? So these two extreme situations were happening. And when this happened, the business actually broke down because the IVR platform could not generate the speech at the right quality that was happening. It could not generate these 100 IP packets or process these 100 IP packets per second that it needs to do per single call. And as a result, voice quality severely deteriorated. So it's what you can see is actually that customers can spend 2 years of their lifetime in a battle trying to find where is actually root cause of my problem. Just as other times, let's say in previous slides, you have seen, you can be fighting with let's say, complaints from customers, and customers say this is happening, and business just doesn't find it, technology doesn't find it. And that's where actually we start to get into the picture of rationalizing this and getting this straightened out. And then as a last slide, technical slide, I would like to show this one here. What we showed here is the amount of menus that is being presented to customers, yeah, And what I don't want to talk about the 10 that you see here. I was more interested in these loops that are happening here. You clearly see a complete set of outliers that is so abnormal, and that is happening, yeah, for 23 customers it happens. They got 100 plus menus. And what was actually happening is the technical system was just looping, yeah. And that's what actually what John T. responded, asked. This situation actually can result in customers sticking for a very long time into the IVR.
So this is where you've got something like a menu option that says, if this is pressed, go to script 3, and script 3 says go to script 4, and script 4 says go to script 3, and it just loops around, playing messages in, not even getting necessarily the whole message out, just little bits of call message.
Exactly. Exactly. And so we had other slides or other examples of sometimes customers being pushed 24, 25 announcements per single second into their ears, which is obviously a ridiculous high amount, but it's happening in platforms. And people are not aware. And why are they not aware? Because they cannot see that needle of irritation in big haystack that is happening. And we have given multiple examples of ridiculous situations there with customers banging with their head on the telephone. Announcements 300 times, customers looping, etc. We have given all those, and it must be able to get those exceptions within a few minutes, yeah, out of the system. And that's actually where we come into the picture. So what we do is we do this kind of big data warehousing, big data analysis, and that's across the whole border. So that means from the top level business, analyzing the servers, the sites, the agents, but down into the IVR, into the announcements, into the database, the server, the switch, the network. And it's very important that that is done, because quality is not just done by a good design. Quality also needs to be done by a good system. This has to go hand in hand. So what have we learned? And I think we are now at the end. So let's say the average, clearly, it's not always giving a good value. Sometimes it's right, but sometimes it's wrong. And yeah, it's like clothes. I mean, when one would make average clothes for a man and female, you wouldn't get a good result, yeah? And I wouldn't like to walk with high heels or no half high heels for 4 centimeters. It won't work for me, yeah? And let's say a second topic is management by exception. I mean, let's be honest, this is a key standard of the Prince2 methodology, but it's not being done. Yeah, people just do not see them. And then complexity, with all that voice over IP, all that stuff, it's only increasing. So one really needs to get a holistic approach, and then obviously with this ever-growing market of complexity, one needs to manage that. So what did we learn? IVR automation is absolutely very valuable. There is no discussion about it, but it can be done better, as you can see. Yeah? And so big data analytics enable this profound capability of auditing, testing, and monitoring in order to ensure this top quality, top grade customer service. And that can be done obviously in IVR, but also in the broader market of call centers and IPT. So that was the presentation. And I hand it over now back. Oh, sorry. Yeah, please, Jonty.
Loda, thank you very much for that presentation. So I think there's some quite important key messages there about needing to check what's happening within systems and within the IVR. So I'd like to jump across to a poll that I think is quite timely for what Loda was saying. And when did you last review and update your IVR system? Was it within the past month? Was it within the past year? Has it been over a year ago? Or have you never updated it since you installed it? So, or if you don't know, if you'd like to put in the answer, don't know. So when was the last time that you reviewed your IVR system? Frank, do you think this is going to be a lot of people saying it recently?
No, I'd say probably it will be the second or third option down within a year or so ago, or more than a year ago.
Okay, well let's have a look and see what the results are here. Sample size of 124. The vast majority here, 41% have reviewed within the past year. Only 26% of our audience have reviewed within the past month. 14% have done it over a year ago, and 10% never. So I think if there was one message we could take away from Loader's presentation, is it's probably for a vast majority of our audience probably time to go and have a look under the cover and see what's going on in the IVR system. Certainly, one of my favourites is listening to calls as they move through the IVRs. This is listening on the, if you like, the telephone line side. So as a caller hits the call centre, following through. I know a lot of us listen to calls once they're connected to agents, but that's certainly very interesting to hear what people are doing and what they're listening to and what they're saying to the computer while it happens. Right, we're going to now jump across to the news desk, and we've got Devon Lunn on the news desk having a look at what's going on within the chat room. So let's just change the baton across to Devon, and we can have a look at what's happening within the chat room. So Devon, do you want to highlight what's been going through?
Yeah, so we've got a really busy chat room today, which is great. Keep your tips coming in for your chance to get a bottle of champagne. We're going to start with a tip today that says, we regularly work with our customers on their requirements. These requirements change through time, and an IVR that is fit for purpose in year 1 of a contract may no longer fit the customer in year 3. Frank, do you agree with this?
Absolutely. I mean, sometimes you get something, within year 1 it may longer be fit for year 1. Demographics change, products change, the company brand or image might change, and the IVR is. So I think that you've got to be constantly reviewing, updating, and improving the IVR. I think too many companies invest and forget, and that's not the way to deal with IVR.
Absolutely, thank you. Dominica says, integrate your IVR with your internal CRM platform in order to automate options and allow customers to self-service and/or increase agents' visibility on the incoming contact. We've got a question.
I think
Sorry, Frank, go ahead.
I think Dominica can do my slides. I'll be talking about that as part of what I'll talk about.
We've got a question in that says, how effective are biometrics with customers calling in from noisy environments? Loader, do you want to answer this one?
No, I think I have to pass that one. I have seen a lot of different, let's say, experiences around voice recognition, and it wasn't always that consistent. So, but there is not really a one answer to that. So maybe Frank wants to take this one.
No, I'd agree. I think speech recognition, whether it be for biometrics or just for word or phrase recognition, if it's a noisy environment, I think it's going to be less effective than a quiet environment. That's my view. Generally, I would always encourage for things like biometrics for identification and verification that you have a backup with DTMF, PIN codes or passcodes or something to cater for that noisy environment. Should voice not be acceptable.
Perfect.
Maybe just a small feedback. Let's say when we are doing testing of IVR call flows, actually what we see is then when we speak a perfect announcement, so exactly what we want each time, exactly the same, there is still a variation of around 20% of the recognition. So that is enormous. Yeah. So to my view, there is still some, let's say, maturity that needs to get there in order to have all that working perfectly.
Thank you for that. If our audience have any answers for this question, please do post them in the chat room. That would be really useful. We've got an opinion in now that says biometrics is great as long as the technology is there for it to be captured correctly. A tip from Alex that says self-service on the IVR is first prize for us. Each customer we can legitimately deflect from the call center agents. It's clear money saved and the customer experience improved. Frank, what do you think of this one?
It's absolutely true. I mean, I think that the automation, and I'll talk about automation and the benefits of automation in my presentation. I think you've also got to be careful, though, that you don't confuse automation with containment. I think you've always got to make it clear if there's a live agent option available, or even if you haven't made it clear, there should always be an option to escape from the IVR into a live agent should the consumer wish to do that.
Brilliant, thank you. We've got another tip that says, make sure the voice matches your brand and values. And finally, we review the setup based on feedback via our satisfaction surveys, and that's by D2. Back to you, John T.
Okay, thank you very much for that. I think there's some quite interesting using satisfaction surveys to is another path for getting feedback back from that. So that's absolutely absolutely great. I'm going to jump across now to another poll, and what I'd like to ask is what do you think of IVR? So when you think of IVR and what are you using in your system, do you think of it as a necessary component for cost reduction? Do you think of it as part of a routing strategy, but not as a key element of the business? Do you think of it as an important channel for customer convenience and customer service? Do you think of it inbound only, or do you not have an IVR system? So if you'd just like to vote on that, that would be great. So what do you think of IVR? And you can vote for more than one option on here. And let's have a look. Frank, do you think cost reduction is going to be very high on?
Yeah, I think call it cost reduction, but I think more and more people are also accepting it's an important element of customer choice and self-service. So I would think that they'd be the two.
And I think you'd be absolutely right there. 77% of the audience. Quite interesting. Only 10% of the audience believe it's an inbound-only channel, so which is quite interesting. And most of the audience don't believe it's a routing strategy, but not a key element of the business. So it seems to be very firmly embedded within our audience here. But then I guess since we're talking about streamlining IVR systems, we've probably selected an audience who are very much into that. So I think that's absolutely great. And I'm now going to move the baton across to Frank Sherlock from Genesis. And Frank, you're going to be talking us through the customer experience elements of streamlining your IVR system.
I am indeed, yes.
So if we just pass the baton across to you. Yeah.
Okay. Hopefully you can see my screen now.
We can indeed.
Okay. So thanks, John T. What Loda spoke about earlier was the challenges of this measuring holistically, identifying the outliers, assessing what we need to do better to continuously improve and optimize. And my perspective is slightly different. I'm not going to have lots and lots of charts and analysis, but I think what Loda and I are absolutely aligned is at the end of the day, we're both addressing the same question. Are we providing a good customer experience? Because ultimately, a good IVR delivers a great customer experience. And what is a good IVR? Well, I guess there's a lot of opinions about what is a good IVR, but this is probably my personal tick list that I'd use when I was thinking about IVR, because consistently delivering against these attributes, knows who you are, caters to your preference, anticipates your needs, respects your time, and serves you quickly, will result in almost all occasions a good and satisfactory customer experience. There's a lot of misnomers, misdemeanors, mistruths out there about IVR and automation. People don't like IVR. Well, people don't hate automation, which is one of the main benefits of IVR. Automation is, it's all around us. We use it in the cash tills or the ATMs, petrol stations, mobile banking, home shopping, and we use it because it's quick, convenient, personal, easy, and respects our time. In fact, we use automation for all of the reasons on the previous slide there. So people don't hate automation, people don't hate IVRs, but people absolutely do hate bad IVRs. They drive people crazy, they reflect really badly on an organization's brand, they can damage a business and leave you lagging behind your competitors. We've all been there. Loda spoke before about multiple prompts that people can listen to, these really frustrating and poorly designed menu trees, the hopeless feeling when you can't break out of the IVR, or when you do break out, you end up with an agent who greets you as though you've just landed from another planet and has no context in terms of, to understand your frustration. So, but this is avoidable in my opinion. But to avoid the frustration of bad IVR, the imperative is to have customer experience at the heart of the design. You have to be prepared to invest in continuously measuring and improving that design. You have to try and make the customer feel special through personalization and the use of data. And sometimes you've got to recognize that avoiding inbound calls, hitting the IVR in the first place, using proactive outbound IVR is a smart thing to consider. And really they're the three things I'm going to talk about very briefly today: personalization, tuning, and proactive messaging. But before I do, why does CX matter? I thought I'd show this slide because this is a slide from Accenture, but there's some mind-boggling numbers about people switching suppliers because of poor service issues. So 66% of customers who switch companies did so due to poor service. Only 21% say their providers are offering them a tailored or personalized experience. The people are using multiple channels when they're dealing with organizations, an average of 3 channels. And customers expect special treatment for being a good customer. $5.9 trillion, of which $1 trillion is in Western Europe, is all related to providing poor customer service or poor customer experiences. And the IVR, as one of the touch points of a customer journey, has a big part to play in ensuring that your CX really does matter to your company. So people say that IVR should be simple, it should be one size fits all, and very rigid. I don't believe that is the case. I think IVR should deliver a great CX, a great customer experience, but a great customer experience really does depend on the IVR knowing who you are and treating you as an individual. And many organizations today, they have lots of data about the consumer. They have the data that sits there on CRM systems, but generally, the CRM system and that data isn't used to improve or personalize the IVR flow. It's used perhaps at the back end to confirm a payment that's been made or an order that's been placed, but it's not used to greet someone personally. It's not used to basically enhance the call flow, to reduce the speed, to increase the convenience. And there's a couple of examples here on the left-hand side. For typical customer service challenge, how can you help callers resolve their issues without talking to an agent? It came up on the web chat before. Use the CRM data. If I raise a call into my IT services company, it should recognize who I am and say, hey, are you calling about an update on ticket 1234? Yes, I am. It uses the data. It tells me that we expect resolution in 24 hours. I'm served and I'm done because we've integrated the IVR with the data. And a good basic IVR in tandem with the data can make sure you route calls effectively. You can be using this data, collecting the information from the caller to get them to the best agent for the issue that they've called in about, rather than being transferred into multiple agents, wasting the customer's time and costing your business lots of money. Similarly, when calls are transferred to an agent, giving the agent the context from the IVR, what the client was trying to do within the IVR before they were transferred, for a more efficient handover to an agent, less caller frustration, better agent motivation, because they're not dealing with continually frustrated customers because they're using data that you already had about the customer to enrich that experience. John, I think it's poll time at this point. I think we're going to just be according to my slides.
Indeed. We're just going to follow up that point you made about integrating IVR with CRM. I'd just like to see in the audience who has integrated their IVR system with their CRM. So have you integrated it to provide a personalized experience? Have you integrated it's only to provide tracking on outcomes, for instance, payments made or orders placed, or is the system not integrated at all and mainly used for just things such as touch-tone menus? So be interested to see the outcome of this. And I think, here we go, the outcome, 73% have not integrated their IVR with the CRM system, so I think it's a very valid point. And 18% have integrated provide a personal experience. So if you've have got a personalized experience, if you'd like to share some of your results in the chat room, we'll come back to that in a brief while. So Frank, back to you with your thoughts on that.
Okay. Yeah. So I think it's encouraging that 17% are using data to enhance the IVR call flow. I think though that there's a massive opportunity there. And 73%, I think the number was, that aren't using data. And really, the use of data, it's going to help a business control its costs, because you're going to get higher self-service. You're going to get shorter call handling times. You're going to get more satisfied customers. So, the more data you have, I think the more you should be trying to use it. And this is not a technical minefield. Most modern IVRs today and most CRM systems have web services APIs. It's very easy to capture data, use it within the context of a call, and lose it. You're not storing the data on the IVR. You haven't got any compliance issues about privacy, etc. But you grab the data on the web services session, use it on the call, enrich the experience. So my view is great at 17%, but it should be a lot more. There's a great opportunity out there. And here's some examples of personalization. In the first example here, proactive messaging, we're sort of predicting a caller's reason for calling in using the data. We notice you raise a trouble ticket XXX, so you're calling about that. It's a nice personal experience. On the second option, intrusive or interactive messaging, we're actually recognizing where that consumer might be, say, in a life cycle. In this case, they may be overdue on payments, and therefore we're going to interrupt the normal flow that they've dialed in about and send them to a collections flow. It might be a bit intrusive, and that might be a bit of a stark example, but if used carefully, I think intrusive messaging and personalization with data can provide a really good customer experience and help the business to get better business results. And then there's passive customization, where you've set up your menu choices, but behind the scenes, based on certain client rules or segmentation, you're only exposing certain parts of the menu to the consumers. I think you've got to remember, though, that IVR is only part of a customer journey. It's not a unique journey in itself. It's simply a touch point. Generally, customers using the IVR, they might have visited the website, they might have tried the mobile app, and the calling as part of that experience. If you can do good journey mapping and your journey intelligence, I think it's really important if you could make sure that your IVR recognized why a customer was entering the IVR as part of maybe a recent journey from another channel, and they're able to use that data to acknowledge that and maybe to structure your flow and menus relevant to the journey that the consumer's on. And this is all about, at the end of the day, great customer experience is low effort. And this is a slide from Forrester using the Customer Experience Bureau. If you provide a good customer experience with low effort, using data to make that personal, enhance the flow, look at the results. 94% of customers at low effort are going to repurchase. 88% will increase their spend. The challenge is the transition from web to phone. So things like visual IVR are I think, going to break down some of these barriers between the transition from web to phone. The ability to have both voice and visual interaction on a web application through visual IVR, I think will help with that. So, tuning your IVR. Loda mentioned how important it is to sort of analyze the IVR, and it's a very iterative and repeatable process. So let me share a few of my thoughts on this. I'd say, first of all, make sure you are getting business-centric data that does allow you to perhaps figure out the success of your IVR, and if you've automated, indeed, the right things and are getting the expected results. Some of the areas on this slide I'd perhaps draw your attention to would be, are you measuring the user satisfaction with the IVR? Are you gathering feedback about CSAT with the IVR? Are you looking at what functionality is not being used, i.e. all them dormant menu options perhaps that don't need to be there? Are you looking at why callers are hanging up, or where they're having difficulties in the IVR, why they're taking more or less time to go from step to step? It's really important, I think, to gather this data, and you can do that from using companies like Loaders, or some of the more advanced IVRs have certainly analytics about the IVR, but I would say look beyond the IVR and into the network as well to get this comprehensive and holistic view that Loader mentioned. And we see this, though, really as a very much an iterative process. I'm banging on about the customer experience design, but IVR tuning is not once and it's done. You start with a good design. You've made this even better by implementing data. You've probably got some tools to allow you to make quick changes. You've got, analytics to analyze the impact of them changes, and then your business changes, your competition changes, the environment changes. So this cycle of design, implement, analyze, change, design, implement, analyze, change is continuous. You don't make a one-off investment in IVR. So when you're looking at tuning data, there's two types of tuning data. There's the quantitative data, which is what the analytics provides. It's generally aggregated or average data. It does present a good high-level picture, but it needs to be complemented with qualitative data, which is the data obtained from the call recordings. So you can really understand the human behavior that led to the qualitative outcomes. Tuning, is a topic within itself, and we could probably spend hours with voice scientists and voice user interface designers and analysts to say what's the best way of doing tuning. I wanted to share with you today a very quick way, perhaps, of how to capture the areas you should focus on for your tuning data. It's a scorecard approach where basically you assess the IVR against what's generally accepted as industry best practice, and then you home in on the real focus areas that you need to gather the data for. So what is generally the scorecard factors that we'd say were general best practice? So set expectations clearly and be honest about live help. That's all about having natural and conversational voice prompts, advising the consumer of agent availability, handling agent availability, even if it's not advised. Keeping callers in control of the interaction for a consistent experience. Is the pace of your prompts correct for the demographic, the product, or the service? Is it clear whose turn it is to interact, the IVRs or the consumer? Are you using consistent voice talent? Are you using consistent terminology for your products and services through the IVR? Using data. Now remember the call and treat them like a human being. Use data. Provide graceful error advice. Blame the IVR, not the human, when things don't work out, and have excellent use of data. Avoid making callers repeat themselves and get them to the right place first time. Check that you're making seamless call transfer, that when you're transferring calls, you're using the data captured in the IVR, and it's consistently routing to the correct agents. Finally, respect the caller's time and listen to the caller. make sure your IVR is concise, easy to follow, quick, and proactive. How we use this scorecard, here's a quick example. We're asking the questions, does it remember me, does it treat me like a human being? We're saying then, we've assessed it against a score of 1 to 5. You can see here that there's very little personalization, good use of CLI. The lower the score, the more important is the requirement that you should invest in looking at getting some data to try and improve that area. So it's a quick scorecard approach of saying, where do I need to concentrate? My final point is, IVR is not only inbound. Loda mentioned there's some things that an IVR simply cannot cope with, especially when there's sudden or unplanned spikes or the seasonality in call volumes. And you'll just give a better overall experience if you actually reach out to the customers proactively with outbound IVR and outbound engagement. It's much easier to contact customers before they contact you. Say, for example, a bill's overdue, or maybe it's about to become due, or there's a service issue that affects a number of people in a particular location. You don't want the consumers calling into the IVR at the same time. You don't want to give them a poor customer experience. So reach out to the consumers with what we'd say was timely, relevant, and personalized information. Use an automated IVR or text or other lower cost channels like chat or email, but just provide a better customer experience and reduce the reliance on customers instigating inbound IVR interactions that may lead to a poor quality experience where you could have been more proactive. On this slide you can see from various research groups and leaders in the field, customers want you to be more proactive with them. They want you to provide personalized communications, and there's a lot of value in doing that for any organization. So my final thoughts, John C., it's all about customer experience. It's not about technology. Put yourself in the user's shoes. Be prepared to invest, continually invest in the analysis and continuous adoption of the IVR. The technology is only ever going to be as good as the design effort that's applied. So thanks for listening to me, and back to you, John T.
Okay, thank you very much. We're going to jump across to Devon on the news desk for a couple of quick audience tips. Devon, what have we got?
Yeah, so Alex says, voice biometrics is coming to the fore. We're in South Africa. We are seeing some interesting handle time savings, and customers report liking it as they don't have to repeat security questions to the agent each time. Kate says, we review it every month. We may not make a change, but we make sure the options match current contact reasons. We've got a question now. We have integrated our IVR with our CRM system. The issue we have found is large volumes of customers use withheld numbers, which blocks our IVR from recognizing the customer. Any ideas to help with this? Frank, do you want to answer this one?
I was hoping you'd pass that one to Loda. Yeah, I think that perhaps you could, if the number's withheld, you could use ask them to input their account number, and then take them from a personal journey, use the data from that point onwards. But if they're withholding, if you want to sort of greet them personally using CLI, the calling line identifier, and they're not giving you the calling line identifier, you're going to have to ask them for some information on the first menu, on the first option, the first prompt, in order to then provide the personal information with the data that you've got.
Brilliant, thank you. Loda, do you have any suggestions on this one?
Yeah, it's a little bit a controversial one, but it's a good suggestion, I think. Is the fact that the CLI is always being passed, even if it is being hidden. So that's a feature of the typical switches, and they block actually on the presentation to the user and to the applications. But underneath it is still there. So most of the time, actually, we have the CLI, even if the customer doesn't want to present it. But that may not be available in all countries, but I have seen this in many countries being possible. So, but for the rest, I agree with the options that Frank proposed. There's not that many options that you have, and then obviously biometrics could be one to identify customers. But I mean, even though there are some positive feedbacks, we also see that banks actually do not engage in that. So there is still too much variation. And so.
Brilliant, thank you. Jonty, I think that's all we've got time for today.
Okay, thank you very much for that, Devon. Some great feedback, and there's more discussion carrying on the chat room. Just like to ask the audience in 1 or 2 words, if you could put into the chat room, what did you like best about today's webinar? If you could put that into the chat room, that would be great. Just a reminder that slides are available on Call Center Helper. If you go to callcenterhelper.com/recorded webinars, and you can also watch the webinar replay, which will be available in about an hour's time. So I'd just like to thank my 2 speakers, Loda van der Sande from Care4CC. Thank you for joining us, Loda. And thank you to Frank Sherlock from Genesis. Thank you for joining us, Frank.
No problem, Jonty. Pleasure.
Okay, and I'd like to just thank everyone in the audience for joining us. And next week we're going to be looking at 10 clever ways to improve call center performance. So thanks for joining us, and please tune in next week. Thank you. Bye-bye.